My name is Maya Collins, and the night everything shattered for me didn't begin with a fight. It began with a velvet box placed gently on a dinner table, like a gift. But it wasn't a gift. It was a warning, a humiliation, and the first sign that I had never truly belonged in the Hale family. 2 years ago, on a cold winter evening in Portland, Oregon, I was having dinner at my fiancé, Ethan Hale's family home. His mother, Vivian Hale, always wore sweetness like perfume, pleasant on the surface, suffocating underneath. His sister, Chloe, sat across from me, perfectly manicured and openly irritated that I breathed the same air. Halfway through dinner, Vivian placed a small velvet box on the table, the same one Ethan used when he proposed. My heart softened for a second. Maybe they had resized the ring. Maybe they'd planned something sweet. But then Vivian pushed the box past me, toward Chloe. "Darling," she said warmly, "you deserve something special. This ring should be yours." Chloe opened it and gasped theatrically. "Oh my God! Mom, it's stunning!" My engagement ring, the ring I kept in my jewelry tray, the ring Ethan slipped on my finger under the Forest Park oak tree, the ring I cried over. I stared at Ethan. He stared at his plate. "Why does she have my ring?" I whispered. He finally said, "My mom thinks it belongs in the family. You'll get another ring, later." "Later?" Vivian added. "Don't be dramatic, Maya. Family sacrifices are normal." Family sacrifices. That was the moment something inside me turned cold. They thought I was powerless, that I would just accept whatever they stole. What they didn't know was this. I had already discovered a loophole they never noticed, and soon I would sign the papers they never bothered to read. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at my bare ring finger, replaying every moment of that dinner again and again. The smirks, the dismissiveness, the way Ethan didn't defend me. But the more I replayed it, the more I realized something painful. The ring wasn't the first red flag. It was just the loudest, looking back. The Hale family had always treated me like a temporary guest. Vivian constantly made comments like, "You're lucky Ethan chose you," or, "Our family has high standards." Chloe compared everything, my job, my clothes, my background, to hers. And Ethan? He always asked me to ignore it, because that's just how they are. I was so in love, I convinced myself it was normal. But now, staring at the empty space on my hand, I finally saw the truth. They didn't see me as part of the family. They never had. The next morning, I drove to Ethan's place to talk. His apartment looked the same, neat, minimalist, expensive. But something felt different now, colder. He opened the door, avoiding my eyes. "We're really doing this?" he muttered. "I need my ring back," I said evenly. He sighed. "Maya, Mom already gave it to Chloe. She's been wanting it for years, and Chloe's practically family." "Practically family?" "I was his fiancé." "That ring was mine," I said quietly. "It was," he replied. "But Mom says a ring doesn't matter. What matters is the marriage." "A marriage? With a man who let his mother steal from me?" Just then, I noticed a folder on his kitchen counter. Thick, full of documents, financial documents, property records, prenup drafts. My name was on several pages. And that's when I remembered something Ethan once told me casually months earlier. "You don't need to read everything, babe. I'll handle the boring stuff." But I wasn't bored now. I was wide awake. And I picked up the papers they never expected me to read, because the Hale family had just started a war they weren't prepared for. I carried the thick folder to Ethan's dining table and sat down. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the terrifying clarity settling in. I began flipping through the pages, one by one, and within minutes, I felt my stomach twist. They weren't just planning a wedding, they were planning ownership of me. The first document was a prenup, already partially filled out, with clauses that made my jaw lock. If we divorced, Ethan would keep the house, all assets, all savings, even anything we bought together. And me? I would walk away with emotional goodwill. Emotional goodwill. The audacity. The next document was even worse. A marital consolidation agreement Vivian had drafted herself. It stated that Ethan's family would have influence over major financial decisions to maintain family structure and protect wealth. They wanted control over my life, my income, my future. And Ethan had signed his parts already. My sections were left blank, waiting for my signature, waiting for me to blindly trust him the way I always did. But the real punch was at the bottom of one page, a quiet little line printed in small, neat text. Signatures indicate unconditional transfer of rights as listed. Unconditional transfer, just like my ring. They didn't steal that ring. They were testing how much I would tolerate, how far they could push before I snapped. And then, the twist of fate arrived as I kept flipping pages. A yellow, sticky note slipped out. It was written by Vivian. Have Maya sign everything quickly. She doesn't ask questions. I stared at those words until they blurred. I didn't ask questions, but now I had answers. And a stack of documents that could turn their entire plan upside down. Quietly, I slid the folder into my bag. If they wanted signatures, I would give them signatures. Just not the outcome they expected. I drove home with the folder beside me, like it was radioactive. Every few minutes, I glanced at it, half expecting it to explode from the amount of deceit inside. But the moment I walked into my apartment, I spread everything across my kitchen table and began reading like my life depended on it, because it did. Some documents were cruel, some were insulting. But one was a mistake that would become my weapon. It was a standard cohabitation agreement the Hales had rewritten to fit their agenda. But in their arrogance, they had left something unchanged. The signature page included a mutual rights clause. A clause stating that all signers, Ethan, his family, and me, must be fully aware of all documents attached under the packet title. The packet title was Pre-Marital Contract Bundle. But here was their fatal flaw. They had attached extra documents to the bundle, property agreements, financial control clauses, and a document giving Vivian temporary custody of major marital decisions. However, these documents were not disclosed properly, not labeled, and legally not valid, unless all parties understood them. And the moment I signed anything under that bundle, their added documents would be flagged as fraudulent. They created their own trap. All I had to do was sign in the right place and let their illegal additions destroy them. I stared at the signature line. One signature would prove that they had hidden documents. One signature would show the inconsistencies. One signature would invalidate the entire bundle. And one signature would legally protect me from everything they were trying to take. Quiet, elegant, perfect. They thought I was naive. They thought I wouldn't read. Vivian's sticky note said it best. She doesn't ask questions. But tonight, the girl who never asked questions became the woman who found answers. All I needed now was timing, and the right moment to sign the papers they never expected me to understand. 2 days later, I returned to the Hale house, calm, composed, and carrying the folder they thought I'd never open. Vivian greeted me with that sugary smile she used whenever she believed she'd won. "There you are, dear," she said. "We need your signatures today. The sooner this is done, the smoother the wedding planning will be." Chloe smirked at me from the couch, still wearing my engagement ring. Ethan avoided my eyes again, like he already knew he'd failed me, but lacked the courage to admit it. I sat at the dining table, placed the folder down, and opened it slowly. Vivian hovered. "Don't worry about the details," she said softly. "It's all standard. Just sign on the marked pages." Standard, right. I flipped to the page I had studied for hours, the page tied to the entire pre-marital contract bundle. The page that, once signed, would make their hidden documents legally questionable and expose their fraud. Ethan leaned forward nervously. "Babe, it's really no big deal. Everyone signs stuff like this. Everyone doesn't have a family plotting behind their back." I looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, but with the quiet acceptance that the man I was going to marry had chosen convenience over loyalty. Then I picked up the pen. Vivian beamed like she had just won a prize. Chloe twirled the ring on her finger triumphantly. And I signed. One signature, clean, precise, perfect. Vivian clapped lightly. Wonderful, now everything is official. Not the way she imagined. Because the moment I signed, I activated the very clause that would invalidate her secret additions. Every extra document she tucked into that packet was now legally compromised. And she had no idea. Ethan kissed my forehead. Thank you for trusting me. Trust, such a fragile thing. They thought they had controlled me. But now, I controlled the contract. For the next week, I acted completely normal. No arguments, no accusations, no hints of the storm I had quietly set in motion. Vivian texted me Pinterest boards of wedding themes. Chloe posted selfies flaunting her ring. Ethan pretended everything was perfect, because pretending was easier than admitting he'd betrayed me. But beneath their celebration, a timer had already started. 3 days after I signed, an email arrived from the Hale family attorney, Richard Alton. The subject line made me breathe in sharply. Discrepancy detected in documentation. Of course, my signature triggered a mandatory review of all attached documents under the premarital contract bundle. And because Vivian had slipped in extra pages without proper disclosure, the system flagged the entire packet. Richard requested an urgent meeting with all parties for clarification. Perfect. On the morning of the meeting, I arrived early. My heart thudded, not from fear, but from the calm before justice. When the Hales rushed in, they looked irritated, not worried. They thought this was a minor inconvenience. Richard cleared his throat. We have an issue. Several documents were added to the bundle without proper labeling or disclosure. Vivian smiled politely. I'm sure it's just a small error. Richard shook his head. No, this is serious, because Maya's signature indicates all documents were disclosed and understood, but these additions were not. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? It means, Richard said carefully, these hidden documents appear fraudulent. If reviewed by a court, the entire bundle could be invalidated, including the prenup. Vivian stiffened. Invalidated? She repeated. Chloe stopped twirling the engagement ring. Richard continued. Someone added clauses they were not authorized to add. This could result in legal consequences. Their eyes snapped to me. But I simply sat there, calm, hands folded. They expected a naive girl. Instead, they found someone who had read every line, someone who understood the law, someone who had just flipped their plan upside down. The room sank into a thick, uncomfortable silence. Vivian's smile dissolved first. Chloe's fingers tightened around the ring she'd stolen. Ethan looked between us like he finally realized something was terribly wrong. But far too late, Richard placed the documents on the table. I need to know, he said slowly, who added these undisclosed clauses? Vivian straightened her spine. Everything in that packet is standard. I simply organized it. Richard's tone sharpened. These are not organizational. These are unauthorized legal modifications. And if Maya chose to challenge them, the court could view this as intentional deception. Vivian's face paled. Intentional deception. A polite phrase for fraud. I stayed silent, letting the weight of his words settle. Chloe scoffed suddenly. This is ridiculous. Mom was trying to protect our family assets. Maya should be grateful. Grateful. There it was again. That entitlement. That assumption I should bend. Agree. Shrink. But today, I wasn't shrinking, Richard continued. Additionally, Maya's signature makes her the only legally secure party in this bundle. Ethan and the family now hold liability for the undisclosed documents. Ethan finally snapped out of his daze. Liability? For what my mom added? That's not fair. Richard opened the prenup. You signed your portion, Ethan. You treated these documents as valid, but Maya didn't sign the hidden pages, which means she cannot be held responsible. Chloe's jaw dropped. Wait, so she has full protection? I met her eyes for the first time since the dinner. Yes, I said softly. I do. Vivian grabbed the packet, flipping frantically through the pages she had carelessly stuffed together. This, this can't be happening. But it was. Her own arrogance had crafted the trap. My signature had triggered it. And now, their entire plan, stealing control, stealing security, stealing my ring, was collapsing in front of them. Richard closed the folder. We need a resolution, immediately. I leaned back, calm. After all, this was the part I'd been waiting for. Richard folded his hands and looked at me first. Since Maya is the only party legally protected, we need her input on how to proceed. 3 sets of hale eyes turned toward me, for the first time. They weren't looking down at me. They were looking up, uneasy, uncertain, waiting. Vivian cleared her throat. Maya, dear, perhaps we should all calm down and resolve this as a family. Family. The same word she used when she stole my engagement ring. The same word she used to justify every manipulation. I didn't let her continue. I want to dissolve the entire bundle, I said quietly. Chloe instantly protested. You can't do that, Richard answered before I could. She can. And if she does, nothing in these documents stands. Not the prenup, not the consolidation agreement, not the property clauses. Ethan rubbed his forehead. So everything goes back to 0? I nodded. Yes. Exactly where it should have been from the start. Vivian looked almost sick. What about the protections for our family assets? I tilted my head slightly. Maybe you should have thought about that before sliding fraudulent papers into a contract packet. Richard coughed into his hand. Trying to hide the fact that he absolutely agreed, Chloe muttered, This is unbelievable. I met her eyes. You took my ring. I'm taking back my rights. Her mouth snapped shut. Richard began writing the dissolution document. As he worked, the room felt heavy, like all the power Vivian once held was draining through the floorboards. When he finally finished, he slid the paper toward me. Sign here to nullify the entire bundle. I didn't hesitate. I signed with the same calm hand I used on the day they thought they'd tricked me. Richard nodded. It's done, Chloe whispered, horrified. So, nothing protects us now? I looked at her. Nothing ever did. The moment Richard confirmed the dissolution, the room felt colder, sharper, like every hidden intention had finally been dragged into the light. Vivian sank back in her chair. Chloe trembled with disbelief, and Ethan looked like a man finally realizing the cost of his silence. He turned to me with a desperate softness. Maya, we can fix this. Forget the documents. Forget the ring. We can start fresh. Start fresh. As if betrayal could be erased like pencil marks, I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I once imagined a life with. And all I saw was someone who chose convenience over courage. Someone who stood quietly behind a mother who rearranged my life without hesitation. I spoke gently, but firmly. No, Ethan, you didn't protect me. You didn't even try. He swallowed hard. I was trying to keep peace. At the cost of me? I asked. He had no answer. Vivian finally snapped. Maya, don't throw away a marriage over paperwork. I turned to her slowly. You didn't just tamper with paperwork. You tried to own me. You tried to own my choices, my finances, my future. You took my engagement ring and gave it to your daughter like it was a toy. Chloe flinched. Vivian forced a shaky gasp. I was only doing what's best for my son. And I'm doing what's best for me, I replied. The silence that followed was the cleanest silence I had ever felt. I reached into my purse and placed Ethan's house key on the table. This chapter is over, Chloe whispered. So, you're leaving? I gave a small nod. I'm leaving everything that hurt me. Richard stood respectfully as I gathered my bag. No yelling, no tears, no breakdown, just quiet, powerful closure. As I walked out of the Hale house, Vivian called after me, voice trembling. Maya, wait! But I didn't. They took my ring. I took back my life. Walking out of the Hale house felt like stepping out of a cage I didn't know I'd been living in. The cold winter air hit my face, but for the first time in months, I could actually breathe. My hands were empty. No ring, no keys, no attachments. But my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Over the next few days, I focused on myself. I returned the wedding dress deposit. I canceled the venue reservation. I deleted the wedding Pinterest board I had once built with so much excitement, and every step felt like peeling off another layer of their control. My best friend, Nora, showed up at my apartment with takeout and a bottle of wine. "So," she said, sitting beside me on the couch, "you really walked away?" I nodded. "They treated me like a possession, not a partner." Nora shook her head. "Maya, they never deserved you. You didn't lose anything, you escaped." Maybe she was right. I threw myself into work, volunteering for a new project. My boss was impressed, and a week later, I was offered a bigger role, project coordination lead. A promotion that had been waiting for me long before I realized I deserved better. One afternoon, while filling out HR paperwork, I caught something on my finger, a faint indentation where my engagement ring used to be. It didn't hurt anymore. It reminded me of who I used to be, and who I wasn't anymore. Meanwhile, the Hale family attempted to call me, Ethan especially. 10 missed calls, 3 texts, 1 apology voice message. I ignored all of them, because they didn't want me back out of love. They wanted me back to regain control, and I wasn't going back. As days passed, I felt stronger, calmer, more myself than ever. I didn't know what future waited for me, but I knew one thing: it would be mine, fully mine. 2 weeks after I left the Hale house, I received an unexpected call from attorney Richard Alton, the same lawyer who had exposed their fraudulent documents. "Maya," he said, "I need to inform you of a development regarding the Hales." I straightened in my chair. What happened? "Your signature triggered a mandatory legal audit of all documents the family submitted. During the review, the court identified several violations, especially involving the tampered clauses. There will be consequences." Consequences. A calm legal word for the chaos they had created. Richard continued, "The fraudulent additions could result in fines or even civil charges. The court will contact you if your testimony is needed, though your rights are fully protected." I thanked him, hung up, and sat quietly. They had tried to trap me instead. They trapped themselves. That same evening, Nora and I were at a small cafe when she nudged me. "Look." At the corner table sat Ethan, alone, head in his hands, looking nothing like the confident man I once loved. Vivian and Chloe were not with him. He looked lost. For a moment, he spotted me. He froze, stood up slowly, walked toward me like each step cost him something. "Maya," he said softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad things would get." I looked at him, really looked. "I know," I replied, "but you let it happen." He swallowed hard. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, I don't hate you. I've just outgrown you." His eyes glistened, but I felt nothing bitter. Just peace. He whispered, "Can we try again?" I smiled gently. "No, Ethan. You took something that meant the world to me, and not just the ring. You took my trust." He lowered his gaze. "And I took it back." Nora squeezed my hand under the table as Ethan walked away, shoulders heavy with regret. My story didn't end with a ring. It ended with freedom. And the papers they never read? They became the signature of my victory.